I want you to stop for just a moment. All right, and I just want you just to get everything else out of your mind. And I'd like you to come up with a person. I don't want you to put your hand up, but I want you to come up with some Bible character that stands out to you as being someone that is 100% devoted to God. Just going to give you a minute. And just think of one Bible character that just jumps out as you as this person, this man, this woman, this boy, this girl, whoever it is. This person is 100% sold out to God. All right? I'll give you a minute. Well, I'm not going to give you a whole minute, but I'll give you a few seconds here. Now I want you to think of this. With that person, what is it about that individual that makes you believe, or that causes you to think that this person just stands out as totally devoted to God? What characteristic is it of them? What is it that they do? What is it that they've done? What is it that what they've said, or whatever it is? What is it that causes you to think, you know what, this person is sold out to God? We're going to look at someone this morning, and the example that I have is not better than yours. It's just probably different than yours. All right, and as a matter of fact, what I'd like you to do, if you'd be so kind to do this for me, I'd like to challenge you to, on a piece of paper, to write down the name of the person that comes to mind, the name of the Bible character that comes to mind that stands out to you as someone who is totally sold out to God, and the reason for it. And then you can throw it in my mail slot outside our conference room out here. The room's all under construction, but the slot is still on the wall, and maybe we'll do a little mini-series on some of these different people and why they jump out as totally devoted to God. This lady that we're going to look at this morning, she has a terrible yet a magnificent introduction. It starts out as this poor lady is in a desperate need. I want you to take your Bibles, and although our text is going to be in John chapter 20, we're going to start in Luke chapter 8. So if you come with me there, please, to Luke chapter 8. We're going to look at just the first couple of verses of Luke 8, but I just want to look at this one particular lady this morning. Starting in verse 1, it says, "And it came to pass afterward that he," speaking of Jesus, "went throughout every city and village, preaching and showing the glad tidings of the kingdom of God, and the 12 were with him," that's his disciples, "and certain women which had been healed of spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, out of whom went 7 devils, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others which ministered unto him of their substance." We're going to look at this lady, Mary Magdalene. And we're introduced to her, and where she had come from was she had been possessed by 7 demons. And clearly what the indication here is that this is in past tense, and Jesus had cast these demons from her. But I want you to imagine what it was like for this lady, all right, as she was, where she came from. There's other instances in our Bibles and other passages where Jesus has cast out demons, and to look at these people that were possessed with these demons. Some portray Mary Magdalene as this gorgeous lady, and maybe she was at one time, but I don't think that she was during this time. And I'm gonna gorgeous as far as a person goes, but physically, quite possibly, quite probably not. We see in Mark chapter 9 and verse 22, there was a father that brought his son to Jesus because he was possessed of devils. And it says here in Mark 9:22, it says, "And oft times it cast him into the fire and into the waters to destroy him. But if thou canst do anything, have compassion on us and help us." This boy whose father brought him to him says, it sometimes it would take him, and uncontrollably try to drown him or try to throw him into a fire, and he'd be burnt and scarred and so forth because of what this demon was doing to this boy who had one demon in him. All right? One. We see when Jesus went, they crossed over the Sea of Galilee, and they got to a place called Gadara, and there was a man there that was possessed of devils. Actually, there was two of them. And these men were there, and people were afraid of these guys because they were so strong, and they couldn't tie them up. They would hold them all down, and they're kind of like me, just kind of always. No, but they had these guys. They would hold them down, and they would chain them, and they couldn't even hold them in chains. All right, and we see in Mark again, chapter 5 and verse 2. It says, "And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones." Doing damage to his own body because of these demons that were there. Was this what happened with Mary Magdalene? It's quite possible. It doesn't go into great detail. But this was not a picnic where she was. There were 7 demons in her. It's amazing that it uses that number 7. Jesus, in another instance, is talking about people that this man that had a demon taken from him, and then afterwards, what happened was he went and that one demon was gone, and this man didn't take care of and replace the bad with God's word. And this demon comes back, and in Matthew, chapter 12, verse 45, and it says, "And then goeth he," talking of the demon, "and taken with himself 7 other spirits more wicked than himself, and they enter in and dwell there, and the last state of that man is worse than the first." Mary Magdalene had these 7 devils, demons, that she was possessed by before Jesus came and cast them out. There's many instances where it talks about Jesus going and healing people, and healing lame people and blind people and deaf people and dumb people, and then he cast out demons out of some of these people. And in one of these crowds, one of these collective times when it says that Jesus came, and there's times when he was like all evening long healing people and casting demons out of people. One of those at one time was Mary Magdalene. And here she is. She's coming there. The Bible doesn't go into great details of her life before, and some have unfairly tried to put other things upon Mary Magdalene that there is no biblical basis for it. Some will back up to, if you're in Luke chapter 8, they'll take you back up to verse in chapter 7, and there's a lady that comes, starting in verse 36, "And one of the Pharisees desired him that he would eat with him. And he went into the Pharisee's house, and he sat down to meat. And behold, a woman in the city, which was a sinner." The indication here is this woman was a harlot. Okay? "And when she knew that Jesus sat at meat, she brought in this alabaster box of ointment." And some will say, well, this has got to be Mary Magdalene. There's no indication that's Mary Magdalene. None whatsoever. All right? And what they'll do, and where this is really propagated and made to come forward, where people think that, well, she used to be a prostitute. She used to be possessed by demons. All right? That's bad enough. But in the year 1324, the Roman Catholic Church opened a home called the Magdalene House. And it was for women that were coming out of that lifestyle and trying to help them through that. But they named it after Mary Magdalene. And then the thing went all over the thing, and everybody thinks that she used to be a prostitute. Like I say, I want to set the course straight here. That there's nothing that tells us she was that. But she was possessed of demons. And whatever she may have done to herself during that time, we don't know. But this woman, we see here in verse number 2, it says, "And certain women which had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, out of whom went 7 devils, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza," possibly she was one that was also possessed of demons. I don't know. It reads like she could have been. "And Susanna, and many others." We see here that as it lists Mary Magdalene, if you were to look up all the verses that have got to do with Mary Magdalene, then there's some that just call her Mary and so forth. It's already reference to her. But 8 times it lists Mary Magdalene, and she is in a list of women. All right? Here we see Mary Magdalene with Susanna and with Joanna. All right? Every time except for one, Mary Magdalene is always listed first. The one time where she's in the list and she's not mentioned first, it's because it's at the cross, and we'll look at that verse later, and it talks about Mary, Jesus' mother, who was there, and Salome, who is Jesus' aunt, also James and John's mother was there, so that they got mentioned before she did, simply because of the Mary's Jesus' mother, okay, as opposed to Mary Magdalene. But it kind of indicates that every other time, all these other 7 times when she's listed with a group of women that are coming there to minister to the Lord and to the disciples, that she is kind of, because she's always number one, she's kind of the one that, at least it's alluded to there, that she's kind of the leader of these people. We need to do this for the Lord. All right? And she would do that. All right? We see here, as we read down here, I want you to notice something very special. Okay? We read down verse 2, and certain women which had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, out of whom went 7 devils, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others, which, I want you to notice this, which ministered unto him of their substance. She ministered unto them. They ministered unto the disciples with their substance. You know what that means? They took what they had and they used what they had, their money, their food, their whatever they had, their time to minister unto Jesus and his disciples. If you look it through, and maybe you might find a spot that I've missed, but nowhere do I ever see when it's talking about in Jesus' ministry of him asking anyone for money. The only time it's even close to that is when he says, Peter, go down to the lake, throw in a hook and a worm, and we're going to ask that big bass out there for enough money to pay for our taxes, all right? And if he catches the fish and there's the money in the fish's mouth, I don't know that he was a bass. He probably wasn't a bass. But at any rate, so how were they supported? It was people that helped. And these people here, when these ladies did what they did on a regular basis, and we're going to see that as we move through here, they took care of the needs. And they're always also, I want you to notice, they're always also in a group of ladies together, working together in a situation that can't be construed as something that's immoral going on, regardless of the old play from years gone by of Jesus Christ Superstar and what they tried to make Christ out to be there and what they tried to make Mary Magdalene out to be there. Garbage, all right? That's not what happened. But they came there in a group to help the Lord, all right? We take a look here in Luke chapter 23 and verse 55. I'm going to put the verse up on the screen here. And it says, and the women also which came with him from Galilee followed after and beheld the sepulchre and how his body was laid. These women were following around, were coming and with however they could minister to the Lord and to his disciples, and they were coming from Galilee, and they were doing what they could to help these men, all right? In John chapter 19 and verse 25, here's the one verse that I was talking about earlier. It says, now there stood by the cross of Jesus his mother and his mother's sister, and Mary, the wife of Cleophas, and Mary Magdalene. Mary is a very common name. We've got 3 of them right here in this verse, all right? But we see that there was Mary at the cross of Jesus. We see that when they went to the tomb afterwards, after Jesus died, and when they went to the tomb in Luke chapter 24, it talks about this, and it lists the people that were there following Jesus' body as Zacchaeus and Joseph of Arimathea took his body and carried it to the tomb. They were there. It was Mary and Joanna and the other Mary were there. These women did what they could to assist Christ's ministry out of their own resources. Out of their own resources. They ministered, which ministered unto him of their substance. I'm going to tell you something. You cannot outgive God. You cannot outgive God. You could try, but you can't. And God will bless. It does not make monetary sense sometimes, but you know what? It's God's math. And I'll take God's math over my bank account before I'll take an accountant's math over my bank account. Because these ladies gave what they had of their own substance. And I don't know what they had. It never mentions anybody. It doesn't mention any family that Mary Magdalene had. Maybe she missed all that, being possessed with devils, and she never got married, and she never had children. I don't know. It seems like she is free with these other ladies to go around and to help as much as she can with them. But whatever she had, whatever may have been left to her, or whatever she had before she was possessed, she took that and she used it for God. What God gives us, He gives us to use for Him. That doesn't mean you have to starve to death. But what it does mean is that we need to be willing to give God what we have. That's why He's given it to us to use for Him. You know, remember what the disciples said as Jesus was at the what we call the Last Supper, and He told them, one of you is going to betray me. They were all beside themselves. We're not going to betray you. And is it me? You know what? And Peter swore up and down, "There's no way I will go to death for you." In Matthew chapter 26, in verse 35, it says, "And Peter said unto him, Though I should die with thee, yet will I not deny thee." But I want you to know what else it says. It says, "Likewise also said all the disciples." You know, we jump on poor Peter, that Jesus told him, "You're going to deny me 3 times. He's very specific with Peter. "You're going to deny me 3 times before that rooster does his little cock-a-doodle-doo in the morning." And Peter says, "I won't do that. I will die with you." The other disciples, the other 10 that were still there, Judas was gone, but the other 10 that were still there, actually, no, Judas was still there, I'm sorry. So the other 11, they said that, "You know what, we will not." Likewise also said all the disciples, "We will not deny you." At the cross, John is listed at the cross with Mary when Jesus says, "John, you're going to take care of my mom from now on." This kind of tells us that Joseph had died a long time ago, all right? But at any rate, John leaves with Mary. And there is no record of any of the other disciples being there. Maybe some of them were hiding in the crowd. But you know what the Bible tells us? It tells us that Mary Magdalene was there. She was there. In Luke chapter 23, we read this verse already, verse 55. It says, "And the women also, which came with him from Galilee, followed after and beheld the sepulchre and how his body was laid." They stayed there to the end. But where were the disciples? They ran away. They're afraid. But these ladies, including Mary Magdalene, stayed not only just to watch to the end when Jesus finally died, but she followed him all the way to see where his body was going to be laid. After Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea, like I mentioned, they went to Pilate, and it says they craved the body. They asked for Jesus' body. And they took Jesus' body, and Joseph of Arimathea bought some brand new linens, and they wrapped the body up, and they put some spices in there and stuff just to help with what happens to a body. But they didn't have time to do the complete, what they would do to take care of the body. And these ladies followed to see where that body was going to be laid. They followed. Anticipation does strange things to us. Sometimes if I have to go on a long trip the next day, I know what I need. I need some sleep before I'm going to jump in the car and drive for 12 hours or 15 hours. Inevitably, I don't get any sleep because I'm anticipating driving this 15 hours. You know, and that anticipation kind of just keeps me going. I'm sitting there, pull up my phone. Oh, it's 2:37. Oh. 2:39. Oh. All right, and it goes on, you know. I remember my sister was terrible with anticipation on Christmas, all right? Christmas Eve, we could hear upstairs. She's in a rocking chair, looking at the Christmas tree, back and forth. She'd come down, and, come on, guys, time to wake up. My brother and I, because the anticipation was there. Christmas is coming. I don't know why she was so excited, but she began all pumped up about this stuff. But anticipation does some things to us, makes us lack of sleep. We see here that Mary Magdalene, I want you to come to our text here, all right, in John chapter 20. In John chapter 20, in verse number 1, it says, "The first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre." Mary wanted to do something with Jesus' body. And they got some spices and so forth, and she left even before, like it was still dark. And she, in anticipation, she wants to do something else for her Lord. And it's, she comes there, all right, and to kind of put it together, you really need to look at all four gospel accounts, especially Mark chapter 16. It's very similar to John chapter 20, and it gives us some other details. Luke gives us some other details. Matthew gives us some other details. And to kind of piece it together, it seems like all the ladies they talked about this ahead of time, what we're going to do. And we're going to get these spices together, and we're going to go and anoint Jesus' body. And whether Mary got with them to begin with, or they kind of agreed on a time as to when they were going to go, regardless of how it worked, Mary ended up, whether they started gathering people together and heading down, Mary lost patience, or Mary went off by herself. Mary got there by herself to begin with. And as she got to the tomb, she saw that the stone was rolled away, and she ran to Peter and John to wake them up and say, somebody has stolen Jesus' body. In the meantime, just to kind of piece this together, so I kind of get a little timeline here. As she has gone to Peter and John to tell them that the body is gone, the other ladies make it to the tomb. And they look inside and they see an angel. And the angel says, go tell his disciples to meet him, and get Jesus is risen, and that he's going to Galilee. And then these ladies, with that message from this angel, one angel, that's an important little fact I'm going to point to here in a second here. They see one angel, they leave, and as they're heading to it, somehow or other, they miss paths here, and Peter and John and Mary straggling behind come to the tomb. I saw a cute little cartoon one time, and it was John with a pencil in his hand, writing, apparently writing down the book of John. And we're reading the one verse there, I think it's verse 4, it talks about that the one disciple, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the one disciple ran ahead, okay? And he got there first, and then as it's talking about John, and then as he kind of looks into the tomb, Peter goes tearing on past him, and he just kind of bulldozes right into the tomb. But the little cartoon that I read was, Peter says, what difference does it make if you beat me here? Nobody's ever going to know. Well, there's John with a little smile on his face recording it for us, but I just thought it was a cute little comic. But Peter and John, they get to the tomb, and they rush inside, and they look inside, and all they see is the grave clothes that are there. And they leave. And then Mary finishes coming. I don't know if maybe she was right with them, or because they were running, she didn't run or whatever, but she got there, and she's there alone. And she's at the tomb alone, and she looks into the tomb, and she sees two angels. She sees an angel sitting at the head and an angel sitting at the foot. And I'm just going to throw this at you. I don't know if there's a real significance to the fact of this. Let me just explain this to you, and then you can think about it, all right? But I wonder if, because there's two angels sitting at the head and the foot of where Jesus had laid, if it's not symbolic somehow of the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat. Whereas the mercy seat, there is an angel, there's two angels there. I don't know. I'm just throwing that at you for fun. But I do want you to notice this. Peter and John ran in there. They didn't see any angels. They didn't see any. The other ladies that came, they saw one angel. They were allowed to see one angel. But Mary, who was outside and weeping and in no hurry whatsoever, but she just wants to see Jesus. All she wanted was Jesus. She got to see two angels. I think they were both there the whole time. The ladies got to see one. It's Peter and John bulldozing in there like a couple of truck drivers. She didn't see anything. They didn't see anything. But there is Mary, and she is outside weeping. Look at verse 10, John chapter 20. It says, "Then the disciples went away again to their own home. But Mary stood without at the sepulchre weeping. And as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre, and seeth two angels in white sitting, the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. And they say unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? She saith unto them, Because they have taken away my Lord, and I know not where they have laid him." She says here, they have taken away my Lord. Where is my Lord? Is he your Lord? He was Mary's. He says, he had taken away my Lord. My precious Lord is gone. And these disciples, or these angels that are sitting there, you know what? He's their Lord too. He's not their Savior. Salvation is only for people. It's not for the angels. Jesus came to die for the world, not for the angels. But you know what? They worshiped him. And why they were there, that's, we can speculate. But God sent these angels there. I think the angels rolled the stone away, and there he is. All right? And they're there protecting, and they're there waiting to give messages. It's what angels do, a lot of, is pass on messages. All right? But Mary's there. They have taken away my Lord. And I don't know what happened here, but we see here that because behind Mary is Jesus, standing outside. Whether he comes into view, again, this is purely speculation. You can take it with a grain of salt, but I'm just going to throw this at you. There's a reason why all of a sudden she turns, all right? It says, "And they say unto her, and she saith unto them, Because they have taken away my Lord, and I know not where they have laid them. And when she had said thus," verse 14, "she turned herself back." And I wonder if the reason that she turned herself back was because now Jesus is in view of the angels. And their attention is now drawn to them. Kind of let somebody look behind you and think, what's back there? That's kind of what I'm thinking, but I don't know. Whether if they saw Jesus and maybe they stood up, I don't know. Again, all purely speculation, but we do know this. She talks to these angels, and they ask her why she's weeping, and she tells them, "Because they've taken away my Lord." And then she turns away from them, and she sees Jesus, and it tells us that she thinks that he's just the gardener. She doesn't recognize him. She's got tears in her eyes. She is beside herself that we came to take care of his body, and his body is gone. And she is weeping because it's her Lord. And as she turns, Jesus talks to her. Verse 14, "And when she had said thus, she turned herself back and saw Jesus standing, and knew not that it was Jesus. And Jesus saith unto her the same thing that the angel said, Woman, why weepest thou? Then he adds, Whom seekest thou? And she, supposing him to be the gardener, saith unto him, Sir, if thou hast borne him hence, tell me where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away. She is so distraught here. Complete respect for this stranger, this gardener that she sees, but also really not even putting the logistics to this. Can Mary Magdalene, on her own, pick up a dead man's body and carry it somewhere? We're not worried about those logistics. She's not worried about those logistics. She probably can't do it. Most of you, probably almost all of you, have probably never had to try to pick up a dead body. They are very difficult to move around. All right, but could she do that? It doesn't matter. All she wanted was Jesus. All she wanted was Jesus. And we see here that she has no concern for the angels. No real concern for the angels. There's really no concern for this stranger, this gardener. Because she is there, and her devotion to the Lord for freeing her from being possessed of these demons, for all the other things that she has seen and heard him preach, and seen him do miracles and healing, as I mentioned earlier, lame people, blind people, deaf people, dumb people, lepers, other people that were possessed by demons. I can imagine when she saw him heal someone else that was possessed by demons and cast them out, how uplifting that would be for her to say, I know what that person is going through. I know what they feel at this point in time. But she didn't recognize when his voice, when he said, she wasn't expecting it all, when he said, "Whom seekest thou?" But then there's this beautiful verse, all right? Before we get to that verse, nothing else mattered to Mary. Nothing else mattered. She had helped Jesus with her substance, but nothing else mattered. Nothing else mattered while Jesus was alive with her substance. She was going to use what she had because nothing else mattered but her Lord. She gave of her own time in traveling around with these other ladies to take care of Jesus. You know why? Because nothing else mattered other than Jesus. She stayed to the very end. The disciples weren't there, or at least it doesn't tell us that they were there. But the Bible goes out of its way to tell us that Mary Magdalene was there. And these other women that she was with, Susanna, Joanna, and the other Mary, there's a whole bunch of Marys, all right? And they were there. But nothing else mattered to her other than Jesus. She only wanted Jesus. She turned away from the angels toward the gardener. And after she pled for the body of Jesus from the gardener, when she said to him, she said, "If you have taken him away, tell me where he is and I'll get him." She turned away from the gardener as well. And we'll see that because what happens next, she turns back to Jesus. All she wanted was Jesus, because we see here in verse 16, "And Jesus saith unto her, Mary. And she turned herself." She turned back to him. All he said was Mary. Can you imagine the elation that this lady had? Going from totally decimated, her Lord is gone, to now all I want to do is do the last thing I can do to his body. And now he's alive. He says to her, all he says is, Mary. And all she can get out is Rabboni, which it tells us means master. It is the highest form of strongest expression of reverent love that she can put into a word. Rabboni, master. And Jesus tells her, like, I don't know if she fell down at his feet at that point, or if she ran around, tried to whatever she tried to do there. I'm thinking that she probably tried to fell down at his feet and hold on his feet. So we see later that Jesus appeared to those other ladies that had already been told by the angel to go, and they had went, and then he appears to them, and they fall down at his feet and worship him. I think that's probably what Mary did here too. And he says to her, "Look, go to Peter and John and the disciples and tell them that I'm alive." How fast do you think she ran? It says that she ran, all right? Why does she have this 100% devotion to Christ? Why? Jesus talked, actually in Luke 7, we're not going to go back there, but before that, he talked to another man here, and he talked about, there was a certain creditor that there was two people that owed him some money. One guy owed him 500 pence, and another guy owed him 50 pence. And he forgave them both. And Jesus asked the Pharisee at the time, he says, who do you think would love him the most? Who do you think was it says in Luke chapter 7 and verse 42, it says, and when they had nothing to pay, he frankly forgave them both. Tell me therefore, which of them will love him most? And Simon answered and said, I suppose he that to whom he forgave the most. And he said unto him, thou hast rightly judged. We have Mary and the amount of appreciation that she has for God. It's amazing what appreciation does, all right? I did a little reading, and there was a group of people that did some study, and they thousands and thousands of people they interviewed. And 79% of people that quit their jobs, the reason they quit was because their employer didn't have any appreciation for what they did. We are driven much by appreciation, Was it because of what Jesus had done for her that brought this great devotion? Or was it because simply she just knew who he was, and she knew it with every fiber of her being? She had much to be an appreciation for. She had been freed from these demons that would have done wicked things to her body, would have tried to destroy her, would have controlled her, and she's out of control, 7 of them in her. And Jesus freed her from that. She could have been appreciated of that. It says in that verse that Jesus also healed their injuries, those things that had happened, that these demons had done to her, and sicknesses that had happened to these other women that were there ministering to Christ. She had an appreciation for that. She had appreciation for the godly friends that she had of Susanna and Joanna and Mary and probably 2 more Marys, all right? And she had that appreciation for that. Was that what it is? We have much to be an appreciation for. We do. We have the option of being free from sin, to be forgiven of our sin. We have a freedom to worship. We have the freedom to choose. We have godly friends whom we can serve with. We have a great church, a church where love is felt and not just talked about. But do we consider our sin that is forgiven to be bad enough to warrant great appreciation? Like what Jesus said to that person, that Simon. He said, which of them will love me most? Do we think that what we've had is enough to warrant? Is our freedom to worship that big of a deal to us? I know the Rays would really appreciate freedom to worship. And we talked about them, and as their church was raided and they were hauled off, people were hauled off to jail for simply preaching this book. How much do we appreciate the freedom that we have to worship Him? Do I really appreciate those that I can serve God with next to us? Mary Magdalene may not have been motivated by the appreciation necessarily of what Jesus had done for her, and she might have been part of it. But it may have been appreciation for, like I said earlier, maybe for who He is, knowing who He is, either way. There's a good word we can use for Mary Magdalene, and that word is much. She owed much, just like we do. And she gave much. She loved much. She served much. Not to try to repay. Not to try to repay God, because that is absolutely impossible. But because He was, as she told the angels, He's my Lord. Is he your Lord? I asked you at the start of the message to who it is that stands out as somebody that is totally devoted to the Lord. Some character from the Bible that God records for us. And then I asked you what it was about them that makes you think that they were totally devoted to God. Let me ask you, how much of that characteristic of that Bible person that stands out to you do you have? How devoted are we to the Lord? Mary only wanted Jesus. That's all she wanted. She only wanted Jesus. What's our desire? You know, we sang a few minutes ago, "Take my life and let it be." And I commented to Sean when he sent me that. I'd given him the song that we're going to close with. And then when he sent me the order of service, I said, hey, that song goes perfectly with what I'm doing. He says, God just told me after I heard that song that we've got to sing this one too. Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee. That's what Mary Magdalene was. She gave her life for the Lord, whatever she could do, whatever that was. Could she be a preacher? No, she couldn't. In the church, in Acts chapter 2, could she be a deacon? No, she's a lady, sorry. Okay, but you know what? She gave what she could to God. I think when it talks about the people that were in the upper room afterwards, I think probably Mary Magdalene was there. No, Jesus' mother was. Probably Mary Magdalene was there as well. We don't ever hear about her again. But I'll tell you what, this lady was devoted to God. She was devoted to the Lord. She only wanted Jesus. Jesus deserves our best. He deserves our best. We owe him our best. Let's, as a family of Berean, give God our best for him. And we're going to sing the song in just a minute, "Give of your best to the Master." All right, but before we do that, let's just pray. All right.